It was supposed to be one of those perfect nights. The kind you hold on to in your memory for the rest of your life, replaying it in your mind when things get hard, when you feel alone, when you need to remind yourself that you were part of something good. It was my granddaughter's graduation dinner. She had done it. She had crossed that stage with her head held high, a diploma in her hand, and a future as bright as the sun spread out before her. We were all so proud. I still remember the way she looked at me from across the table when the waiter brought out the champagne. She had that little smile she gets when she's trying not to cry, that little sparkle in her eye that tells me she's thinking about her grandmother, my late wife, and wishing she was there to see it. I felt a lump in my throat then, but I swallowed it down with a sip of the bubbly wine. This was a night for celebration, a night for family. The restaurant was one of those high-end places downtown, the kind with white tablecloths that feel like silk under your fingertips and chandeliers that catch the light and scatter it like diamonds. My daughter had insisted on it. She wanted everything to be perfect for her daughter, and money was no object. I remember sitting there, looking around the table at all the faces I loved most in the world. My daughter, Sarah, was glowing with maternal pride. Her husband, Mark, was a bit more subdued, but he had a soft smile on his face as he watched his daughter laugh with her cousins. My brother, David, was seated next to me, making a joke about the size of the forks, the kind of silly humor he always used to lighten the mood. I even had my neighbors there, the Johnsons, who had watched my granddaughter grow up from a tiny baby into the brilliant young woman she was that night. It was a scene of perfect, idyllic happiness. It was a picture-perfect family portrait come to life. As the main courses were cleared away and the waitstaff began to bring out the desserts, I felt a warmth spread through my chest. It wasn't just the wine or the good food. It was a feeling of contentment. I had worked my whole life, raised my children the best I could, and I was now sitting at the head of this table, surrounded by the legacy of my efforts. My son, Richard, was there, sitting 2 seats away from me. He had a successful business, a beautiful wife, and a home that looked like it belonged on the cover of a magazine. My daughter was a successful lawyer. My grandkids were thriving. I had done my job. I had built a family that could gather in a place like this and celebrate each other. I sat back in my chair and let the gentle hum of conversation and laughter wash over me. I closed my eyes for just a moment, thanking God for this life, for this family, for this moment of pure, unadulterated peace. That's when the storm hit, and it came from a direction I never would have expected. From my own flesh and blood, my own son. Richard stood up so abruptly that his chair scraped against the floor, a harsh, grating sound that cut through the gentle murmur of conversation and laughter. The sudden movement was so jarring that I felt a jolt of shock run through my system, a primal, instinctive alert that something was terribly wrong. He had a look on his face that I had never seen before, a mask of twisted fury that seemed to age him 10 years in an instant. His face was flushed, his jaw was set like granite, and his hands were balled into fists at his sides. He slammed a hand down on the table, hard enough to make the delicate china plates and crystal glasses rattle. Everyone around the table went silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks hung suspended in mid-air. The Johnsons stopped laughing. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. $500, he shouted, his voice booming across the table, echoing off the high ceilings of the restaurant. The people at the nearby tables turned to look, their faces a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. $500 is missing from my wallet. My heart started to beat faster. I looked around the table, my eyes scanning the faces of my loved ones. Everyone looked as shocked as I felt. Sarah was staring at her brother with wide, confused eyes. Mark had gone pale, looking like he wanted to disappear. My brother David was just frowning, his brow furrowed in confusion. My daughter-in-law, his wife, was whispering something to him, her hand on his arm, trying to calm him down, but he seemed completely beyond reach. I had the cash in my wallet, he continued, his voice trembling with rage. It was for a business deal. It's all gone. He was looking around the table, his eyes wild, accusatory. He was looking at his family, at his father, his sister, his uncle, his neighbors, as if they were a pack of thieves. I tried to remain calm. I was the patriarch of this family. I had to be the voice of reason. "Richard's son?" I said, my voice as steady as I could make it, though I could feel a tremor of anxiety deep in my gut. "Just calm down. It's probably a mistake. It's got to be somewhere. Maybe you dropped it in the car, or it could have fallen out in the restroom." "No, Dad," he snapped at me, cutting me off. The venom in his voice was so sharp it felt like a physical slap. "It was right here. I know it was right here. I had it when I sat down. I put it right in my inner pocket. It's gone now. And no one has left this table since we sat down." His eyes narrowed as he scanned the table, like a detective examining a crime scene. "I'm not letting this go. I'm not letting a thief sit at this table." A cold dread began to spread through me. My son, who I had held in my arms as a baby, who I had taught to ride a bike, who I had walked to his first day of school, was looking at our family like we were suspects in a crime. This was my family, my legacy, the people I had sacrificed everything for all my life. I looked at my daughter, Sarah, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. This was supposed to be her daughter's night, and her brother was turning it into a circus of accusations and paranoia. "Richard, this is ridiculous," I heard my daughter say. "You're embarrassing yourself. This is a celebration for your niece. Just sit down, we can discuss this after. I'll give you the money if it's that important. Just please, stop this." "I don't want your money, Sarah," he bellowed back at her. "I want what was taken from me. I want justice." With a sudden, decisive movement, he got up and walked to the doors of the private dining room. I heard the click of the lock as he turned it. He then proceeded to do the same at the other door. The private dining room was now sealed. No one could get in, and, more importantly, no one could get out. "Nobody is leaving this room until I find my money," he announced, his voice cold and authoritarian. "I don't care who you are. Father, sister, uncle, neighbor. Nobody leaves until I search every single one of you." My jaw fell open. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Search us? He was going to search his own family like we were common criminals? I looked at the Johnsons. They looked mortified, caught up in a deeply personal family drama they had never wanted to witness. My brother David was shaking his head slowly, a look of profound disappointment on his face. "Richard, this is ridiculous," I said, my voice now firm. "You are not searching your family. This is madness. We are your father, your sister. Have you lost your mind? Everyone empty their pockets," he commanded, ignoring me completely, his eyes moving across the table like a predator. Purses, pockets, jackets, everything on the table. Now, the room was completely silent. I could hear the sound of someone's rapid, shallow breathing. I think it was mine. My daughter-in-law was crying silently. Sarah was just staring at her brother with a mixture of hatred and pity. Mark was looking at the door, probably wishing he could have just taken his family and walked away before it came to this. I felt a wave of shame so powerful I thought I might be sick. Shame for my son. Shame for what he was doing to our family. Shame that this was happening in front of strangers, in front of neighbors. And then his gaze settled on me. His eyes, cold and hard, locked onto mine. He walked around the table, his footsteps heavy and deliberate on the polished wood floor. He stopped right in front of my chair, looking down at me. I felt so small at that moment. I felt like a child in trouble, not a father being confronted by his son. He stood there, breathing heavily, the silence in the room so deafening I could hear the blood roaring in my ears. "Dad," he said, his voice dripping with a contempt I had never heard from him before. "You're first." The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "Dad, you're first." It wasn't a request. It was an order, a command from a son to his father. I saw my grandkids' faces. I saw the horror in their eyes. I saw my granddaughter, the guest of honor, the one whose night this was, staring at her father with a look of utter devastation. Her graduation dinner. The moment that was supposed to be the culmination of all her hard work, her dedication, her brilliance, was being reduced to this. A shakedown, a hostile interrogation. and she was watching her grandfather being singled out for humiliation. I remember thinking to myself, is this really happening? Is this my life? Is this my son? I looked at his face, the face I had kissed goodnight 1,000 times, the face I had seen smile with pure joy on his wedding day. I didn't see that boy anymore. I saw a stranger, cold, calculating, angry stranger. I looked around the table. No one moved. No one spoke. Everyone was frozen, their eyes locked on the scene unfolding before them. They were all too terrified to intervene, too shocked to speak. Slowly, deliberately, I stood up from my chair. The legs scraped against the floor, a harsh sound echoing the harshness of the moment. "Fine," I said, my voice a low, defeated whisper. I felt a tear welling up in my eye, but I willed it back. I would not cry, not in front of them, not in front of my son. I looked at my granddaughter, and I gave her a small, apologetic shrug. I tried to convey with my eyes how sorry I was that her night was ruined, how sorry I was that her father had lost his mind. I raised my hands, a gesture of surrender. "You want to search me, Richard? Go ahead. Search your father." He didn't hesitate. He reached out and began patting down the sides of my suit jacket. His hands were rough, invasive. It wasn't a professional search. It was an act of aggression. He was trying to prove a point. He was trying to humiliate me. I heard a muffled sob from somewhere. It might have been my daughter. It might have been my granddaughter. I felt a cold fury building in my chest, a righteous anger that fought against the crushing weight of the shame and humiliation I was feeling. He was treating me like a criminal, his own father. His hands moved to the interior pocket of my jacket. He fumbled around inside, and I felt him close his fingers around something. For a split second, a flash of panic shot through me. Had I? No. I knew I hadn't touched his money. I had no reason to. But what was he holding? His eyes widened. A triumphant, malicious smile spread across his face. It was a look of pure, unadulterated victory. It was a terrifying sight to behold. "Got you," he whispered, his voice cold and triumphant. He pulled his hand out of my pocket, and in his grasp, he held a tightly folded wad of cash. $100 bills, 5 of them, $500. I stared at the money in his hand. My mind went completely blank. I couldn't process what I was seeing. It was impossible. There was no way that money was in my pocket. I hadn't put it there. I would never steal from my own son. I was a man of principle. My father raised me better than that. My wife raised me better than that. The entire room gasped. I heard a sharp intake of breath from Sarah. My brother David pushed his chair back, his face a mask of shock. The Johnsons looked at me with a newfound wariness, as if I had just transformed before their eyes. The betrayal I felt was beyond measure. It wasn't just the accusation. It was the evidence. It was the look on his face. He had planted it. I knew it in my heart. He had put that money in my pocket. He had orchestrated this whole ugly scene just to humiliate me. But why? Why would he do this to me? To his own father? In front of everyone? At his own daughter's graduation dinner? The cruelty of it was staggering. It was calculated. It was premeditated. The man I had raised, the man I had loved, was publicly destroying me, my reputation, my honor, my legacy. He stole it, Richard shouted, holding the money up for everyone to see, like a trophy. My own father. He stole from me. Look at him. Look at the thief. Everyone look at what he is. His voice was wild, manic. He was baying for blood, and he had just pulled the trigger. My legs felt weak. I grabbed the back of my chair to steady myself. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room boring into me. The shame was a physical weight on my chest, crushing the air from my lungs. I felt like I was in a nightmare, a terrible, inescapable dream where the people I love most had turned into monsters. The room was spinning. I was in a waking nightmare. I didn't take that money, I said, my voice trembling but firm. It was a lie to everyone in that room, but it was the truth to me. I would never steal from you, Richard. You are my son. I love you. Why are you doing this? Shut up, he screamed. You're a liar and a thief. I should call the police. I should have you arrested. In your old age, you've become a common criminal. My own father." His voice cracked with manufactured rage, but the triumph in his eyes was unmistakable. And then, a small, quiet voice cut through the chaos. A voice that was shaking with tears, but clear as a bell. "Dad, it was my granddaughter. The graduate. The one whose night he had just destroyed." She stood up from the table. The tears were streaming down her cheeks, but her face was set in a determined expression. She was looking at her father, her eyes full of a sorrow that went deeper than any anger I had ever seen. My heart broke for her. "Dad, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, but in the silence, it carried. "Why are you doing this to him? To all of us? You don't understand, honey," he said, his voice softening slightly as he addressed her. "He's a criminal. I had to expose him." "No, Dad," she said, shaking her head slowly. "You don't understand. You think he is a thief? You think he would steal from you?" She took a deep breath, a shuddering breath that shook her entire body. She then turned to the table, to the Johnsons and the rest of the family. "I'm sorry, everyone," she said, her voice trembling. "This is my fault. My grandfather didn't steal that money." Everyone stared at her in stunned silence. Richard's face contorted in confusion. "What are you talking about, honey? I found it in his pocket." "I know," she said, her voice so low it was almost inaudible. "I know you found it in his pocket. I put it there." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. It was deeper than the silence of a forest. It was more absolute than the vacuum of space. It was a silence that sucked all the air out of the room. Couldn't breathe. Richard's jaw dropped open. His face went from triumphant confusion to pale shock. What did you say?" "I put it in his pocket," she repeated, her voice stronger now. "I saw you put the money in your pocket at the beginning of the night. I watched you. I knew the money was there. I saw you slip it in your jacket. I knew you had it. I didn't take it from you. You didn't lose it. You were never missing $500. She looked at me, her eyes full of a love and pain that choked me. "Grandpa, I knew you were going to be blamed. I don't know why I did it. I knew you were the one he would accuse. I was afraid of him. I was afraid of what he would do. So I took the money from his wallet when he went to the bathroom, and I slipped it into your pocket. I wanted to make sure that if he accused anyone, it would be you. I thought if he accused you, it would be easier to prove your innocence. I wasn't trying to get you in trouble. I was trying to protect you from him. I was so stupid. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Grandpa." I stared at her, my heart aching. She had created a trap for my son, but in doing so, she had caused me a world of pain. But I understood her. In her own way, she saw the ugliness in her father, and she was terrified. She feared he would destroy me, so she tried to orchestrate a situation where the truth would come out, where his true nature would be exposed. She just didn't know how it would all unfold. Richard started sputtering, his face a patchwork of red and white. "What? You little liar. You can't do that. Why would you do that? Why would you protect him? He's a thief, a liar. I can't believe. I raised you." "You didn't raise me, Dad," she said, cutting him off, her voice icy cold. "Grandma and Grandpa raised me. You were always too busy with your work, too busy with your deals. You were never there. You cared more about that money than you ever cared about me. I'm not stupid. I see you. I know you. I know you hate him because he never gave you that money for your business. I know you've been holding a grudge for years. This wasn't about missing money. This was about revenge." My head snapped up. What was she talking about? What money? A grudge? It was as if a hidden story was unfolding in the secret corners of my family's life that I had never known about. "Shut up," Richard screamed. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know you asked Grandpa for a loan a few years ago," she continued, ignoring him, her voice getting stronger. I know he said no because the business was risky and he'd never seen you work so hard for something. You were trying to build a self-destructive empire, and he refused to fund it. I know you've hated him ever since. The room fell back into a heavy silence. I felt a memory stir. I had forgotten about it. I had told him no. I told him I thought the business was a bad idea, that he was spreading himself too thin, that he was about to make a terrible mistake. I had said no, but I had said it out of love, not out of malice. I thought he understood. It was never about money. It was about protection. But he had seen it as betrayal. And now your own daughter is trying to frame her own grandfather to protect him from you? I finally spoke, my voice heavy. I turned to Richard. What have you become? What have you allowed your hatred to turn you into? It doesn't matter what any of you think. Richard roared, his voice trembling. He is still a thief. I found the money on him. He had it. That makes him a thief. Even if my daughter put it there, he had it in his pocket. That's possession of stolen property. I can call the police. I can press charges. You'll all be witnesses. He was grasping at straws. He was so desperate to be right, so desperate to see me fall, that he was willing to destroy his own daughter in the process. His eyes darted around the room, looking for a shred of support, for someone, anyone, to back him up. No one did. He was standing completely, utterly alone. No, Richard, a voice said. It was Mark, my son-in-law. He had been silent this entire time. He was a quiet man, a stoic man, but the quiet ones are often the most dangerous when they finally decide to speak. There's no way my daughter did it alone. He then looked at his wife, Sarah. Sarah, did you know about this? Sarah, my daughter, was crying. She was sobbing into her hands. She looked up, her face tear-streaked and red. I knew, she whispered. I knew she was going to do it. She told me. She was so scared. She saw the way he was glaring at you all night. She saw the look in his eyes. She came to me before dinner. She told me he was going to try something. I tried to stop her, but I was too late. By the time I realized what she had done, it was too late. I wanted to tell you, Dad. I wanted to warn you, but I was hoping, praying that it wouldn't come to this. I prayed he would calm down. I prayed he wouldn't do this. She looked at her brother with a look of pure revulsion. You've made a monster of yourself, Richard. I hope you know that. Richard looked from his daughter to his sister, his face crumbling. He was losing control. He was being exposed not just as a liar, but as a manipulator, a schemer. His own daughter had orchestrated the trap, but his own sister knew about it and didn't stop him. The very foundation of his power in this family was cracking. He had no allies. He had no one. He was standing on a crumbling cliff, about to fall. You see, I said, my voice regaining some of its authority. You see, my son, your hatred for me has consumed you. And in doing so, you have alienated your own daughter and your own sister. They plotted against you to protect me. I didn't ask for this. I never would. But the fact that they felt they had to, the fact that my own granddaughter feared you enough to set this elaborate trap, I let the words hang in the air. It was a devastating verdict. He had lost his daughter. He had lost his sister. He had lost any shred of respect anyone in this room had ever had for him. I'm not the one who is exposed here, Richard, I said, my voice hardening. You are. You came here to destroy me. You wanted to take my honor and my reputation. You wanted to see me shamed in front of everyone I love. But you didn't succeed. You have only succeeded in destroying yourself. He stood there, a broken man. His daughter had turned on him. His sister had turned on him. His plan had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. The money he was so desperate to find was sitting in his daughter's hand. She had just handed it to me. But this didn't feel like a victory. Felt like a tragedy. My family was broken. My son, who I had loved and nurtured for his entire life, had revealed himself to be a monster. And my granddaughter, my sweet, innocent granddaughter, had been forced to participate in this charade. My heart ached for her. It ached for my daughter, who had to make the impossible choice to let her brother destroy himself. Get out, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Richard, "Get out of this restaurant. Get out of my sight. You are no longer welcome in this family." He looked at me, a flash of defiance in his eyes, but it was hollow. It was the defiance of a beaten man. He didn't say a word. He just turned and walked out of the private dining room. He didn't look back. He couldn't. The moment he was gone, I felt the tension in the room break. The Johnsons immediately began to make their apologies, their faces pale with shock. They were polite, but I could tell they couldn't wait to leave. My brother David just shook his head, a look of profound sadness in his eyes. My daughter was crying into her husband's shoulder. My granddaughter had thrown herself into my arms. She was sobbing so hard her whole body was shaking. "I'm so sorry, Grandpa," she whispered into my ear. "I'm so sorry. I thought I was helping. I thought he would get caught. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I didn't mean for you to get hurt." I held her tight, stroking her hair. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered back. "It's okay. You did nothing wrong. You are a brave and beautiful girl. I love you." In that moment, I was not a patriarch. I was not a victim. I was not a hero. I was just an old man, holding his granddaughter, trying to make sense of the nightmare that had just unfolded. I had lost a son, but I had gained something profound. The absolute proof that my love for my family, my commitment to them, was reciprocated. My daughter and granddaughter had risked everything to protect me, to reveal the truth, even if they had gone about it in a messy, destructive, heartbreaking way. The story of that night spread through the family like wildfire. Richard lost his business. Without our family's support, his shaky empire collapsed. He lost his wife, who was mortified by his behavior. He lost contact with his daughter, who refused to speak to him for years. He became a ghost, a cautionary tale whispered about at family gatherings. He had destroyed everything he had ever built, all because of a hatred he couldn't let go of, all because of a $500 loan I refused to give him. The irony was, I had the money all along. I had it in my account. I was waiting for him to come to me, to show me a better plan, to show me he was ready. I was waiting to see if he had learned patience, learned strategy, learned integrity. I never gave him the money because I wanted him to learn those lessons on his own. I didn't realize he would interpret my love as betrayal. Time healed some of the wounds. My granddaughter went on to become a brilliant doctor. She moved away, built her own life, but she never forgot what happened that night. She never forgot the lesson it taught her about family, about love, about the thin line that separates loyalty from destruction. And I, in my old age, learned the hardest lesson of all. I learned that sometimes, the people you love the most are capable of the deepest betrayals, but it is the people you least expect who will take a stand to protect you. Looking back now, I don't see that night as a victory. I see it as a tragedy of lost love, of shattered trust, of a family torn apart by a single act of hatred. But I also see it as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. My daughter and granddaughter proved that family isn't just about blood. It's about who stands by you when you're being searched, who tells the truth when everyone is lying, and who loves you even when you don't deserve it. As I sit here now, writing this story, I realize that the real hero of that night wasn't me. It was my granddaughter. She was barely an adult, but she had the courage to stand up to her own father, to confess to a crime she didn't commit, to destroy her own family to save her grandfather. She is the true legacy of my life. Not Richard, not the money, not the business deals, but her. She is the one good thing that came out of that mess. She is my pride. She is my joy. And Richard? He learned his lesson the hard way. He learned that you can't build a life on hatred. You can't build a family on lies. And you certainly can't find redemption by destroying the people who love you. He spent the rest of his days in the shadow of that night, a man haunted by his own bitterness. I sometimes feel a pang of sorrow for him. I sometimes wonder what my life would be like if I had just given him the money. But then I remember the look on his face when he accused me. I remember the cold, calculating hate in his eyes. And I realize I didn't lose a son that night. I didn't lose a son at all. I lost a son a long time ago. That night, I just finally buried him. So, to anyone listening to this story, I leave you with this. Family is a fragile gift, can be broken in an instant. Guard it with everything you have. Love your children, but do not enable their destructive tendencies. Protect your honor, but do not sacrifice your family to do it. And never, ever underestimate the love of a grandchild. They can save you in ways you never imagined, even when they almost destroy you in the process. That night was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. It was the end of my relationship with my son. But it was the beginning of a deeper, more profound bond with my granddaughter. And that, I suppose, is the real meaning of justice. Not revenge, not punishment, but the truth coming out, even in the most painful way imaginable. It was a night of betrayal, but it was also a night of salvation. And in the end, I think I can look back on it and say, without a hint of irony, that it was the most beautiful disaster I have ever been a part of. It taught me what true love really is. It taught me what sacrifice really means. And it taught me that even in the darkest of times, the truth will always, eventually, come to light.